Good, think we're good. And if someone catches us saying we're good,
It's all right. It's like a delay.
Right. I hope.
Okay, we are live. Justin.
Two of us.
Justin's trying to do mechanics over here.
That's the IT guy.
I try my best. I did try my best.
All right, so we are back. I think it was 2 months ago that we were last here. Yeah, it was 2 months.
It was 2 months ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, we lead busy lives.
2 months went by quick too.
Productive lives.
Yeah.
Again, so my name is Bianca Hughes. I'm an associate professional counselor. I'm in private practice in Roswell, specializing in perfectionism, primarily working with women. Also work in a mental health hospital as a PRN therapist in an outpatient department. And I have to my left.
My name is Justin DeBose. I am a professional counselor in the state of Georgia, currently specializing in children, adolescents, and family counseling for both males and females.
I'm Jared Washington, associate professional counselor, work with children and adolescents, and also work in a psychiatric hospital as a weekend lead therapist.
Oh yeah, you are the lead now, aren't you?
I am. I was going to say that.
He's a good lead therapist.
Better than the last one.
He was the last one.
Yeah, he was the last one. Why would you say that about yourself? All right. So today we wanted to talk about, still staying on the subject of mental health in the Black community. So in particular, we wanted to talk about incarceration. So this started for me, if anyone has seen it, I've watched the 13th on Netflix, but the one that really, really hit home for me was the Kalief Browder documentary. I don't know if anyone's seen it. I do encourage you to see it if you haven't. I will say this, the first episode, is a few, I think it's 5 or 6 episodes, it was really, really difficult. I literally had to push through it. I was crying. I'm a crybaby, but I was crying through various parts because it was just so heart-wrenching. Just to give you a background, he was a young boy arrested in New York when he was 16, accused of stealing a backpack. And he spent 3 years in Rikers Island prison in New York without ever being convicted. And he was released and still wasn't convicted. And he was given many different opportunities. What I loved about him, he was given opportunities. He was given plea deals. But for him, he knew he didn't commit the crime, and he said he was going to stay and prove his innocence. And in that process, he got in a number of fights, was picked on by guards, was brutally treated. He spent 1,000 days in solitary confinement. And it is recommended that you just really need to, just only 15. So he spent 1,000 days and was never convicted. So he came out, talked about his story, and then, of course, he had a lot of, if you're in confinement, you know, anyone who knows, like, we are created to connect, we are created to belong. So if we are in confinement, we're gonna react to that situation. It's really interesting that the animals can't even do that.
No,
you know that?
No one is meant to be alone.
Yeah, they fight the rights for animals versus human beings. Yeah. So he was in there for 1,000 days, and of course he had started to hear voices, psychosis, depression, all different types of mental illness. He came out, wasn't convicted. He still was harassed when he came out, but he was a fighter. He was doing really well in college and things like that. He was harassed, and then he unfortunately completed suicide. So that was a really, really sad thing. After all he went through, you know, he's a hero. He's a hero. I mean, they're closing Rikers Island now.
Really?
Yeah. It said it's going to take about 10 years.
Wow.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, they're going to close it. And if you ever see it, and if you know, the majority of the population is Black.
Oh, of course. Of course. That's why we're here today.
Yeah, so that's why we're here.
Course.
So that's what I really propelled me to talk about this and really wants me to continue to make a difference. I think like probably a few days after I connected with someone, I was started to give talks with the public safety officers about mental illness and about addictions, just because of that, to just help further that education, because it's something that really touched my heart. So I talked to both Jared and Justin about it, and so we just kind of want to share and kind of discuss a bit more about that, about the mental illness and being incarcerated and the impact and the effects and the family, because it's not just one person that's affected, it's a whole family. So Justin, you want to talk about deinstitutionalization first and explain what that is, and how that impacts us?
Yeah, so the picture I'm going to paint, guys, is how we got to this point in the first place. When you think about the history of mental health and mental health treatment, the big scary word that got thrown around a lot was asylums. Way back in, let's say, the 60s, late 70s, before that, you used to hear about all the horrible experiments people would do on mental patients in asylums. So they figured, let's close all of these terrible places down and that'll make things better for mental health. Well, they did that, and the problem was that didn't really fix the mental health issue. Because they didn't institute enough programs to actually help those that are mentally ill. So they closed down all these asylums and they let all of these mentally ill people just out onto the streets. Without any sort of support. So hence the homeless problem that we have today. So as this continues on, what ends up happening is they figure we've got to get you got these homeless people on the streets who are probably dealing with mental health issues, who unfortunately are not used to the world in the way in which it works now. So they start to engage in behaviors that people find very unsettling. Let's say unsettling. And they, of course, what's the natural order? Call the police. And after they call the police, individuals get sent to jail. And after this happens for years and years, the jails are populated, and eventually there are more and more jails. They're bigger jails. And so what ends up happening is the prison system ends up becoming the new asylum. They deinstitutionalized all the asylums and instead put everyone that would normally go in one into prison, which creates a whole nother set of issues, because now instead of just being individuals with mental illness, you're individuals with mental illness and a record. So now you have two things working against you. And that's kind of what's led to the point that we're at now. We've talked about mental health in the Black community before, how a lot of things that Black people deal with gets diagnosed as mental illness. And then couple this with the fact that now that we're incarcerated at a significantly higher rate than any other group of people, you end up wondering how many of these people that are incarcerated are actually criminals and how many are just dealing with mental illness. And you'd be surprised about the numbers, to be completely honest. So that's where we're at. That's where we've gotten to now, currently.
And so how that impacts us as a community, I think, as you guys will know, is that African Americans make up 13%
of the population,
in America, but account for 36% of those in jail. So you can only just imagine how many the percentage of those people also will also have a mental illness in there as well.
Many of them
do, and not getting the treatment that they need. And also we make that distinction between the jail and the prison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a difference. Yeah, so
very true.
Your jails are pretty much where anyone is housed who just was arrested and is waiting trial or waiting for bail and things like that, where your prisons are your individuals who are already sentenced to time and are serving out their time.
Yeah, they're waiting to be transported to another prison, and sometimes because they're overcrowded, then you've got a whole nother mix of everyone else in the prison, and so they're not also, or in the jail system, and they're also not getting the care that they need when it comes to the mental health. And then we're not going to forget the war the war on crime, war on drugs, sorry. Back in the Reagan administration, where people were just being put in jail for taking drugs, not even necessarily just
during that administration. They almost anything.
Yeah, for taking drugs. So then, and that just goes to back that addiction is a disease. So just imagine you're being locked up because you got cancer.
Right.
Okay, you're being locked up because you got diabetes. So many people say, well, they need to be locked up. They're on drugs. No. This is a disease, addiction. So these people have an addiction and they're being arrested because they're using drugs, have a small, and they have versus going to get the treatment that they need. So that increased also the jail population quite substantially.
And Bianca, I see someone on my actually brought up a good point.
Yeah.
Saying how I don't want anyone in jail as people to be missed. How the institutions weren't meant for treating mental health. Something about piggybacking back to the asylums for a second, about how a lot of times many people got dumped off in asylums because the family didn't want to deal with them anymore as well. And that individuals acted quite strange, so the family dumped them off in the asylum. And kind of funny because the prisons and the jails actually still kind of became that.
Yeah.
Where you dump people off and kind of forget them.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. Appreciate that.
And even to go back to the war on drugs, where during the Ronald Reagan era, and it even kind of started with Nixon a little bit too. But
continue.
yeah.
He apologized.
Super predators, right?
He apologized.
Yeah, he apologized for it.
Shit now.
Yeah.
But even going back to the war on drugs, if you even look at when the time that they were given for crack cocaine in comparison to coke, to powder cocaine,
right?
And if you look at the demographics of who were using crack cocaine in comparison to cocaine, powder cocaine, then you see there was like a hidden agenda there,
right?
And that's what we're getting at too. We're getting at how the prison systems are used to house
straight up
people.
Mass incarceration.
Mass incarceration is used to house
modern day slavery.
Modern day slavery. That's exactly what it is. And if you go back and read I want to say it's the 13th Amendment, where it says that slavery is abolished unless convicted of crime.
Correct.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding right there. I hate to be corny with it, but it's right there in your face. So I think that's just something also to touch on when talking about the war on drugs. And we're still seeing it today. Or kind of now they're kind of turning into like this opioid crisis. And they're looking for all this treatment because now it's starting to hit different types of
heroin individuals are victims. Yeah. Individuals that use crack are addicts.
Yeah.
Which don't get me started.
Addiction is addiction. And so that part about the addiction piece still covers mental health. So I don't want anyone to feel like, well, that's addiction. This is not. No, this is the whole realm of the thing. So now it's a huge thing with the opioid crisis, right? Because now it's hitting the more wealthier homes where they're overdosing. And so now there's a change. And that's another big thing because it'd be interesting. I tend to find, and I was having a discussion with another therapist, and she's actually in California, and she said that she's a white therapist, and she admitted and she realized, because she works with a lot of people in a program, and noticed that how the majority of the people who had committed a crime with a mental illness were in treatment, but she never noticed any Black people in treatment. And even for me, I've seen some people, the DUIs and stuff, come into treatment. They're not Black. Yeah. They're not. They go to the jails. And this also goes back to... It wasn't offered to them. It wasn't offered.
It wasn't offered to them.
Sometimes, and there's also, I know a program where they actually have to pay. Instead of going to jail, that they pay to go to treatment. Some people can't afford to go to treatment. With the Khalif Browder, the bail was $900.
Right.
Family couldn't afford $900 bail.
Right.
For some, they're like, oh, that's not a lot. For some people, some people, that's a lot of money. The whole family, he had brothers, sisters, mom, dad didn't want to pay, apparently.
Right.
This is what it said on the documentary, but they did have $900, and it took them about 2 weeks. By the time they got someone to give them the money, they said no, because he was on probation and not letting him out.
Right, it could have been anything.
Yeah.
Not let him out for whatever reason.
Could have been either. So that's another big factor as well. And those are the people that are also getting arrested. The people who are homeless, the people who are on low income. The education is also low. It says it here. This is a really good, I just want to share this. It's called The Incarceration's Front Door, the Misuse of Jails in America. You guys can look for it online. It's a great breakdown of the jail system and the statistics and the numbers, and just about the whole system, basically, that it needs to be changed because it's not doing what it needs to do.
Right.
There's no rehabilitation. People are just going in and out, and they're not being treated fairly. So it says here, 47% of jail inmates have not graduated from high school or passed the general education development GED test. 47%, and you said what we were discussing earlier about
third grade.
In third grade, they build prisons based off of third grade reading level. So if you're depending on your level of reading in third grade, they build prisons based upon that. So it's really sickening. It's really sickening. And just to be blunt with it, I mean, if you just think about it. Like if we look at Khalif Browder, right? If we look at, he's sitting in jail waiting, not convicted, sitting in jail for 3 years, right? And some of us may be thinking, like, how is that possible?
Oh, because his court case, he went to court like 30-something times.
Oh, sure.
And they kept saying, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. So about 7 different judges, it's not ready, it's not ready. What? What do you mean it's not ready? Look.
They get paid per day, per bed. You know, so it's about money too, especially now they're starting to privatize these prisons.
Oh yes,
and they're starting to privatize these prisons. They're starting to privatize these prisons, and so you know, it's all about money.
All of it is.
It's all about money. And it's all about color.
Yes, you can say that.
Oh yeah, please be free.
He said it quietly. It's all about money. It's all about color.
I'll say it loud. It's all about color.
No,
it's all about money. It's all about color.
Yeah. And so we want to highlight that it is about that, and everyone's like, well, I thought you always talk about mental health. Well, thing is called incarceration and mental health. So what happens? I also want to talk about in general when someone's arrested and they're going to, and this is just arrested. I'm not even talking somebody who is actually convicted. And
we're starting at the front.
Yeah.
We're just arrested. Okay.
And they go in, they're the breadwinner, or they bring money, and there's no money in the home.
Oh,
whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're arrested. You especially if you didn't do anything, right? So imagine you go arrested, you didn't do anything, or something minor or whatever, and so. Might not have money for bail, your family might not. So now you're staying even longer, you're not earning money, you're getting frustrated, especially if you didn't commit or do the crime. So that's impacting you as a person, like, how did I get here? Why am I here? I didn't do anything. Or, you know, this is minor, why didn't no one have any money? You know, I'm really trying to make it day to day. I finally got my break and now I got arrested. Maybe it was a ticket or something. And I'm trying to catch up and now I'm in jail. Right.
And when you end up getting arrested, or you have to go lock up for a small period of time while they figure out what to do with you, every day you're not at work, of course, is a no-call, no-show. Which after, I don't know how many people's jobs will give them more than one of those, but chances are you get one and you're done.
Yep.
So let's just say hypothetically, that's the breadwinner of the family who gets held overnight, 2 nights, 3 nights, over a weekend, whatever it may be, and he's missed a few days of work. Now suddenly that breadwinner can't make money for the family. So again, it all plays into the mental health and the stability of the Black family. What happens to that family at that point?
Now the whole family's stressed out.
The whole family's stressed out.
Overwhelmed, anxious,
depressed,
very.
Getting some depression in here now, right? How are we gonna make some money? How are we gonna what are we gonna do now? Stressed out, right? For some people. So now that's impacting kids. Then we're talking about food, what we're going to eat. Then we're talking about malnutrition. Now we're talking about we can't focus in the school. This just goes on. It's not just that straightforward. And I know some people will be like, well, they're giving me the crime. Da, 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 da.
Oh, I love that.
I am talking from the beginning when you are arrested, and it is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but people are treated like they're guilty the moment they're arrested.
Until they're innocent, right?
Right. And so that still impacts that, and that's impacting the family. Not to mention the money factor. If they do get the money together for bail, and I have experience trying to get someone out of bail, that stuff was not easy. Because it's not just about the money, then you have to prove that you work to keep, like, it's serious.
Yeah.
To get someone out of bail, on bail, is not that straightforward. And so you're running around doing all these things and all these stresses upon the family that impacts them, and is also impacting the mental health, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and just imagine if you have somebody who's arrested who does have schizophrenia, right? Or they have bipolar, and they're in a manic state.
They are not, right, they're not going to respond well.
Mind.
They're not going to respond well to being
They're not going to respond well. If they got schizophrenia, they're hearing voices, they're paranoia. Now they're in the jail system. And there's, remember, we're talking about jail. They're just arrested. So they're not necessarily, because the police have, if they commit a crime, the police, in all rights, has to arrest them. Like, that's just what they have to do when it comes down. They often don't have that choice. They often can't 10-13. And 10-13 is when someone is
They can't be involuntarily committed.
Yeah, they're involuntarily committed to psychiatric
hospital. Bianca, something I want to go back to real quick. You talked about that stress that comes over the entire family when one individual gets arrested as a member of that family. And when you think about people's decision-making skills,
or your friend.
Or your friend, good point. You think about people's decision-making ability when they're under that amount of stress. And you're thinking about, are they going to make proper decisions? Are they going to make well-informed decisions? Or do they feel rushed? Do they feel like they have to do something desperate because now it's in a desperate situation? And let's especially take this current climate, not even political, just in the with the prison system the way it is now, with the number of individuals that have been killed by police. You hear stories about single mothers, well, not single mothers, they become single mothers, about mothers who are terrified whenever their child or their husband or anyone gets stopped by a police officer or gets arrested because you don't know whether they're coming home or not. So think about what that's doing to that individual's mind at that moment. And you're thinking, what decision is she going to make? What decision is the family going to make in the midst of that? They're probably extremely hurried, extremely rushed, and they're more than likely, they'll probably do something brash because they're not thinking right.
Exactly.
And it makes perfect sense for them to think that way because they don't know what's about to happen to the individual.
Exactly.
And
another thing to even touch on is when we're talking about somebody who's dealing with schizophrenia, that may be hearing voices and dealing with like paranoid delusions, or talking about somebody that's in a manic state, and they're dealing with police officers just on the street. We're dealing with individuals who don't know how to manage these illnesses or know what it even looks like, and they handle it in brute force. And then so even before they get arrested, we could start talking about police brutality, right? I've read plenty of stories of police officers tasing or tackling or doing, using brute force against individuals who, in my eyes, because I'm a mental health therapist and I know what to look for, doing it to individuals who clearly are in a psychotic break or dealing with some type of manic episode or anything like that. And it's interesting to me that police officers aren't trained on mental illness. And
no,
actually, you just did.
Yeah, I just did.
You just did one.
I just did. So I don't want to.
Not enough. Let's say not enough.
Well, let me say this. The Georgia is called the Georgia Crisis Intervention, and what they do is they provide training to public safety officers. And I just did this 2 weeks ago, so I do know that it is available, and it's a week-long program. So I will say that, and the guy who's over it, really guy had been a police officer for 30 years. So I was talking to him about it, and he really wanted to drill in that they're human beings and give them the understanding of the mental illness. However, they are educated, but if you don't see it enough, there will be some limitations, and you're not always, and they're still trained a certain way as police officers to think and do things a certain way because they're protecting.
Bianca, I believe that exists. I believe that it's out there. I would love to see the attendance rates of such a program, because I truly don't believe that enough people that are police officers and things of that nature are actively in such programs like that. That's just me.
I think there were about.
That's just me. I would love to see the attendance rates of that program like that.
Well. Now I'm saying it's there.
Right.
What people do, the information is a different thing.
Right.
So when I did it, there was about 20 people, and they actually called me back, so I'm doing it again next month.
Great.
So and it's a different place.
Please keep doing it.
And well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. After watching Khalif Browder, I knew another therapist who did it, and I got in contact because I really wanted to make that impact. And so we give the information, but you have to get used to it, and you have to remember they're still trained as public safety officers.
Correct.
So they do think a certain way and see things somewhat differently to what we do as therapists. And then you don't have the human element or fear in the situation for both the officer and then both the person who's being arrested, especially if they have a mental illness, like the schizophrenia, or because that person has paranoia and is seeing his hallucinations.
Flashing lights with individuals pulling up. Flashing lights, unknown individuals pulling up, shouting at them. Those three things right there will cause an individual with schizophrenia to go off.
Yeah.
It's not going to end well.
Yeah. So we also just have to think about that impact, and then when they're being arrested and things like that, and they have that, and if they don't have the knowledge, and then how does that now affect the family?
Right. How does it affect the family? Oh man.
It keeps people.
When an individual becomes quote unquote a statistic, how is the family affected? Well, the shortest way I can answer that, Bianca and Jared, is let's say they started let's say everything started with the Zimmerman case, of course. How many years ago was that, Jared?
About 3 or 4. 4 years. Yeah.
I want to say it's been
about 3 or 4 years
since the case, and then the crime happened when about 5. Yeah. Look at what's happened. Look at what's just happened within the community in the last 5 years, to the amount of paranoia that exists now. And then when you think about the number of people killed, and then understand, I don't say this to minimize it to everyone watching. I don't say this to minimize it. The number of people killed is definitely less than, let's say, less than 50. It's only been less than 50. But look at the amount of paranoia that has grown within certain communities concerning the police, concerning incarceration. So when you think about the effect of the family, if such a small, very important, but small number have died at the hands of police and incarceration and being held, and you see what it's done to the whole nation. So imagine with one person getting arrested, what that does to just the family. It wrecks it. Yeah, it completely wrecks it.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about, and if we're talking about, in a financial sense, when individuals are getting arrested, and you got that, you're taking away that breadwinner, you're taking away that person that provides for the family. Just look how broken down the family can be. We know that a nuclear family is the best for a child, for the most part. Right. Mom, dad.
As long as everyone's healthy.
As long as everyone's healthy, mom and dad, that's the most, right? You take one of those units away, or you take one of those pieces away from the unit, what does that do for the child, right? What kind of trauma does that bring on for the child? What kind of trauma does it bring on for the child if they got to visit their parent in jail on a weekly or bi-weekly or bi-monthly basis?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? they start to internalize that type of stuff, and that's the type of impact that it has on the family. And we're not even talking about when you get convicted, when you can't vote, where you had trouble getting housing, and you had trouble getting jobs, all of that. So we're not even at that point, you know. But we're talking straight when you get arrested, but the impact that it has on the family. And what sucks is because you have a lot of these, and I keep bringing it back to color because it's important. I think
it's very important.
It's important, but you have a lot of this going on. You have a lot of this going on in communities of color where these certain individuals are being targeted, being highly policed, right? Being highly policed in communities of color. And so,
absolutely.
So if you have communities of color being highly policed and a lot more, I don't even want to say a lot more. You have more arrests being occurring in these communities of color. What is that doing to the? Imagine we already talked about what's doing to the family, but imagine how that impacts the Black family unit as a whole. You get what I'm saying? And so, yeah, that's
what the whole documentary 13 on Netflix talks about, and it goes in deeper into the impact on the Black family or Black people in regards to the mass incarceration and the new form of slavery, and how that just continues to break down the family. Because if someone's in, then you go spend this money. The amount of money you got to spend if someone's in to make calls, to buy stuff. And so now that family is not even able to keep going, and then you have that going back again to the additional stress, and then that floats down to the family and other people. And so it's just the continuation of keeping the breakdown of Black people. And you have to remember also when especially for the Black men that are being arrested, that are already being profiled numerous times before they've actually been stopped, maybe not arrested, so they've already got that stress upon them. When we talked in our last one about the empowerment of Black men, that you talked about, when you greet each other, you talk about, yeah, man, I just feel like, yeah, I'm making it, because it's just you're just constantly in a survival mode, because you don't know at what time, what am I going to do, or how am I going to survive, because I'm constantly being pushed and attacked and being profiled. So if you imagine, if you're always profiled, it messes with your identity, right? I'm always huge on identity. I'm always going to go back to identity, because that is your foundation. That is everything that you are. Once you know who you are, who you really are as a person, your strength, your characteristics. I'm not talking about what you do. I'm not talking about your career. I'm not talking about being a mom or a dad. I'm being you as an individual, as a person. Yeah. Right. Once you know that in your identity, then that's set. But when you have issues, that's going to be rocked. Anything you experience, if you're arrested, why? What's wrong with you? You're going to ask those questions, and it's about your identity. And it's going to get rocked. And if you have a firm enough foundation, you're just going to be able to just get back up. But some people don't even have that foundation of their identity and knowing who they are and being firm in that.
Think about that. Even in the beginning example that you gave with Browder, even you described he was a hero. He seemed like he had a great foundation.
Yeah,
and then after getting out, he
did was heroic. You know, he had the great strength, amazing resilience, and he's just like in the video. You know,
it looked like it, huh?
He did, but he kept getting beat. His foundation wasn't strong enough. The characteristics were there, but the foundation wasn't.
The point that I make isn't necessarily to knock on Browder so much as it's once an individual gets arrested, and he's incarcerated, your whole identity changes. And it's only so much that anybody can take before they're beat down. And that's what's happening to many communities, but especially ours.
And that's because look at how
solitary confinement.
Look at the state of jails now. Right? Man, yeah. Like if you
not who they look like. I don't want to know. No, I'm not even laughing. I don't want to know.
If you have an idea, if you watch any one of these, I'm trying to think of it. If you ever watch Locked Up, and they show like these jails and they show these prisons, and if you see like the quarters that they live in, if you see the individuals, or I don't want to say the individuals that they're around, but the mindset that individuals take on in order to even just survive in jails and prisons.
You form a new identity.
To form a new identity.
Yeah,
it's enough to break down that foundation, because you're in survival mode. You're literally treated as an animal.
Yeah.
You're literally treated as an animal in there.
Yeah.
And
animals are treated better.
Yeah, animals are treated better.
Much better.
It's crazy. It's ridiculous. But and it's not a form of rehabilitation in a reasonable sense. It's not at all. You know, and that's what jails are actually supposed to be. It's supposed to be rehabilitation, but it's not rehabilitation at all. It's just a place to house people who committed crimes, and only God knows what actually goes on in there. But it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it goes back to my thing that I'm really frustrated, making myself mad. Oh my gosh, I don't understand the point of you going to jail, you do your time, or just prison. And you do your time, and you come out, and you still got put on.
You see, I wrote that. That's exactly what I wrote.
That you have a. I've done the time. Like, you don't need to know that. That's none of your business. Like, and now. That is not rehabilitation, that you are going to forever label me this person, but I did the time. I did the crime.
Adult time out.
I did the time. That's it. We keep moving, right? No. You are labeled for the rest of your life as this person, as this monster, as this thing. But you did the time. That was the whole point. But you've got to put it on a job application.
And generally, if you put that on the job app, you can kiss that job.
Exactly.
That we all know what that means.
And that's why prisons and jails is just a revolving door.
Oh,
that's
definitely.
Exactly why.
Yeah.
Because they're targeting communities of color.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's all set up. It's all set up.
Oh yeah. Because if I come out of jail, I'm rehabilitated. I want to go find a job. Take care of myself and my family. Can't find a good one anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go find me a job that's making how low? What's minimum wage now?
8 or 7.
8, 7 something. So yeah, put me around there. I could work 40 hours a week making that. There's no way I can live on that. Yeah, there's no way you can live off of that.
No,
so,
you have to work like double shifts.
Well, Georgia's minimum wage is like $5.25.
It used to be. It's probably 7.
But the federal is like 7.
Yeah, I think it's gone up.
Either one is terrible, man.
But anyways, let's say it's 7.
After a while.
No, you can't survive on that.
No, not at all. Of course I can't survive.
So then you have to have.
I need to make additional money somehow.
Right, and you might have to do
I can't do it legally.
So say you do another job, which most people do, right?
Most people try to get 2 jobs.
Working 60 hours a week, right?
Most therapists work 60 hours a week.
60 hours a week.
There's a lot of people out there.
I believe, and I don't know who invented 9 to 5, 40 hours a week and said that's what you need to do, because I don't believe in that. You cannot ask any of my friends.
9 to 5 with 9 to 5 with an hour long.
Yeah, I don't
lunch
believe.
Break actually isn't 40 hours.
Some people get 30 minutes, but I don't know.
That's still not 40 hours, but
I don't know who created that system. But anyway, that's what you're meant to get and get your rest on the weekend. But if you're working 60 to 80 hours a week, you don't. So once again, we're going to go back to the mental health. You are working all these hours, no rest, no break, no downtime, stressed out, just about making it. It's just an ongoing cycle. It's just an ongoing thing. Just even in that, you know, you do the crime, you come out, and it's just continually penalized, continually broken down. And then talk about trying to get support and system in the community for mental health.
Well, think about it, Bianca. Do you really have time to get support?
No.
I have to work 2 jobs to feed my family because I can't get a good job because I've been in jail.
And you're too tired.
So I don't have time. Besides trying to even see my family, who has time to actually go to therapy? Who has time to get support?
Yeah.
Nobody.
You know, that's not even on your mind until
survival is.
Well, no, but I tell you what they do.
What?
Drink.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely.
Smoke.
Yeah. I have to have something. I have to have some sort of
some way to
take the stress off.
The edge off.
And I don't have time to spend 2-3 hours of therapy to take the stress off. So what to do it faster? This pill, this rock, that drug, this drug, whatever it may be. Whatever will do it faster. Because I have to get back to work in 8 more hours.
Oh yeah,
to make enough money to live.
And I still may be drunk because I had
probably
if I went to sleep and I just had to go back to work, then I get arrested, get a DUI, and then that happens.
Oh, that's
again.
strike two.
Yeah. and of course, in every
Because no one
organization,
taught them any coping skills or ways to manage stress.
Yeah.
Like, no.
And of course, in every generalization, there's an exception. So you have your like one or two success stories that people like to base. Like, well, you can make it. You know, look at this guy. He became a lawyer after doing 20 years in prison. Or you can do it. And it's like, come on, like let's look at the reality.
Let's look at the statistics.
Yeah, the statistics says it all. The statistics says it all. And I've did counseling in the jail before, and I interned at a jail. I'm not going to say what county it was, but I interned at a jail here in Georgia. And one of the interesting things about it was all about counseling to cope while being in jail.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
And I wanted to do that internship because I was all for keeping people out of jail.
Yeah, it's too late. They're in there.
And they're in there, and I'm like, this is not what I'm looking for. But I kind of tried to implement it with certain people that I thought was going to probably get out. But it was all about coping while in jail. Mm-hmm. So like you said, Bianca, they don't learn how to handle like the stress of the outside world. It's about handling the stress of being in jail.
Because it's an entirely different world.
Yeah.
It's an entirely different world.
Yeah.
You hear about individuals all the time that get out and they're just not ready for what the world is at that point. You've been in 10 years, you get back out, you're not ready for what's out there.
Yeah.
And it catches you off guard. And if you're not prepared to transition into that properly, which, let's just be honest, you're probably not going to have something to transition you into it, peacefully, calmly, whatever word you want to use. You're not going to have something to make it a seamless transition.
Yeah.
Chances are you're going to need something outside of jail that helps with that transition.
So what is that? What is some things we can do? What is some solutions that we want to share?
I'm glad you asked that, because someone on my feed just said that too. Said this is starting to sound hopeless.
We're giving facts.
Yeah, because I'm with you. I follow you, Laurel. It's bad. It's bad.
Okay.
This is why, side note, this is why you see so many therapists and mental health professionals and they seem very cynical or negative at times. It's because when you kind of study this and you're exposed to this all the time, it's really hard to keep a positive demeanor because it starts to seep into your core. It's very frustrating.
It's heartbreaking.
So the same thing that kind of helps us is one of the biggest things I think will help a lot of others as well that are dealing with this sort of situation. And I can say it all the time. And it sounds so cliche when you say it, but guys, it's so true. Your support network when you get out of jail is probably one of the most important things that you're going to have. If you get out of jail and you're just back by yourself, you're in the same type of stuff, you have no one really uplifting you, chances are that same hopelessness you felt going in, you're going to feel coming out.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel just as hopeless. And when you get your first, let's say you run into your first roadblock of the person that doesn't want to hire you because you're just out of jail, that hopelessness will compound. And you'll end up doing something again to end up in there because that's all you know at that point. In my opinion, guys, I think one of the biggest things that has to happen when an individual gets out of jail to help is a mix between therapy if they have time. I understand, like we just said, that's tough for them to carve out time for. I want them to, but I understand that it's tough for them to carve out time for that. But also, what is their support network like and how much encouragement are they actually getting? When you go, like you said, when you're in jail, you get treated like an animal.
Mm-hmm.
What's outside of jail for that individual to tell them they're not an animal, they're still a human being, and that their whole life is in front of them, or what's left of their life is in front of them? If all they have is people treating them like they're a felon, they're a convict, whatever it may be, nothing really, like we've said before, if you raise a kid from birth and all you call him is a knucklehead, by 17, that's what he knows. He feels that's all I am.
Yeah.
So if you've been in jail and you've been just constantly called one thing or another, that's all you believe when you get out. So what's outside of jail telling him otherwise? What's outside of jail helping him to reshape his own identity of himself?
Yeah. Well, that also happens before.
We hope.
I hope it happens.
We hope.
That the identity piece and therapy piece.
It would be nice.
And the, especially if someone has mental illness as well. In the Black community, tend to ignore it.
Pray it away.
Yeah.
Until it gets really, really bad. Pay attention to those signs.
Pray
You
it
can go
away.
to the church. You can go to your, you can go to your community service board. It may take a while, but you can be seen. If you are low income, or don't have insurance, you can go to your local community service board in your county.
Should be seen for free.
And be seen for free.
Yep.
Yeah, you can get help. You can get meds. You can get medication if you need it. You can get therapy if you need it. And go checking out your community service board. So you can get that support if you know a family. Some people are stubborn, I understand. You may see it, you tell someone they don't want to listen, but at least you tried and you're starting to have those conversations. Substance abuse. You see somebody, they've been fine and they're starting to drink a bit more. Hey, are you okay?
Right.
You don't have to call out and say, hey, I see you drinking more. Just say, hey, is everything okay? Anything I can help you with? People are going to shut down if you say, hey, you're drinking too much.
Don't go up to them and tell them they have a problem.
But just ask, hey, is everything okay? How's life? Anything I can help, any way to support. If you see their habits starting to change as well, because you don't know how that can lead to, if you're seeing the signs of any increase in different behavior, or people are changing, or any mental issues, or any substances, then just have the conversation, just a check-in conversation, just to help, just so we can support. And I just want to say to the Black community, we just need to support one another more, and not put people down. Like, whatever people are trying to do, however they're trying to succeed, I just see, so-and-so's doing this, or why they're doing it that way. Who cares? I don't care. If people are doing something, support and pay money. if your friend is doing something, support them. Support comes in. You pay money, you're going to support, you're going to encourage, you're going to let them know it's possible. Because you know what? That one support may stop someone from going to do something that's illegal, right? Or going to get them in trouble. It may stop someone from maybe trying to commit suicide. It may stop someone from going to drink. You don't know. Like, support, is huge.
Jared, I love Bianca's passion. I do.
Go and support.
But also another solution is really looking into some reentry programs, because there's a lot of reentry programs. Well, I don't want to say a lot. There's a good amount of reentry programs. More than people realize. Yeah, there's more than people realize. Reentry programs that are out there that can help you assimilate back into the community, because that's what's really that's what's difficult. It's kind of like, it's kind of like when you go off to Iraq and you come and do a tour, right, and you come back and you have PTSD. It's really literally
exactly what it's like.
Exact thing.
Exactly.
It's like you go to jail, you come back, and you're trying to assimilate back into the community, but you can't, because it's difficult, because you've been trained or you've been accustomed to something for so long that it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Right. And so look into those reentry programs that look into those reentry programs that could really assist with assimilating back into the community and prevent from going back into jail. Right.
Somebody on my feed asked a great question. What about families that normalize drug and criminal behaviors? And how do the individuals, when they get out of jail, get help if that's what their environment is?
You gotta step out your environment.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in my head.
I mean, you do have to. It's
hard.
It's a simple sentence, but it's so hard to implement.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you get rid of your family.
It's just
you
recognize.
Just gonna look for help in another place.
You recognize who needs to be in that inner circle, right? You recognize who needs to be in that inner circle compared to that outer circle. Not saying cut your family and friends off, but they may not need to be the closest friends to you if they celebrate drug behavior, they celebrate criminal behavior, the same things that Jazz probably got locked up for.
But they said, but those are your resources.
You need.
What they say?
You said those are your resources.
You got options.
I would do everything in my power to try to find some
I wouldn't consider that
a resource.
I wouldn't consider that a resource if they're normalizing criminal behavior and drugs, and that's not really your resource. That's really what's landing. That's what's landing you back into the situation, or landing you going back into jail. So there's not really your resources.
I would say it's more. That's just your environment. That's what you know. It's your comfort zone more than your resource.
Yeah, it's your comfort zone. And understand, we're not saying don't talk to your family, get rid of your family. No, we're talking about to broaden
Your privilege is showing.
We're talking about to broaden your perspective, because whenever we have people come in and the family is a big issue, I never ever tell anyone to get rid of their family. That is not it. You have to broaden. There are things out there. There are things you may have to do something you've never done before. And yes, it is scary, and you're out of your comfort zone.
I would say broaden your perspective and start to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I think boundaries becomes a very important thing at that point. You're welcome to hang and be around whatever resources you want to be around. But if drugs and certain things have been an issue for you and they're still engaging in a lot of that around you, then it begs the question of how much respect do they have for what you're going through, especially if you possibly asked them to please stop doing that. Mm-hmm. But then again, I understand a lot of times if you've been going for a while, you've been incarcerated for a while, you finally get back home, the first thing you don't want to do is police your family. Mm-hmm. And say, hey guys, I don't need you all to do this around me. But the road that individual is about to go on is probably extremely difficult anyway. Some difficult conversations have to happen. Yeah, I mean, they just have to happen.
They had to set boundaries, and their whole family.
It can work.
Is using, and they don't like it. They'll be like, hey, all right, we'll respect you. Like, I know people like that who their whole family, and they set the boundary. They spoke up, and you know,
it ain't easy.
No, it's not easy.
As you said, that may be their definition of the norm. Oh, definitely. Which, of course, oh God, education in our community needs to increase tenfold.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it needs to increase a lot in our community.
Absolutely, if it is your norm. But I think the question was, what was the question? I think the question is, what if people go? Was that the initial question? And we're talking about someone who wants to go ahead and make the change. Some people may come out and not want to make the change, may not want to separate the things. So I can't remember what the person had asked first.
No, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, because
she agreed.
Because I think if the question is if they want to change, what do they do now if they come out and they want to get that help?
Yeah, right.
What do they have to do? Because not everybody wants to.
Exactly.
And that's ready. I don't know if I want to say everyone's.
You can say is ready or want to, and honestly, it's almost interchangeable.
But I think that's important that you make that distinction. That
very
distinction that we're talking about people who want to make the change as opposed to people who don't want to make the change.
Right.
So that's just to go back to your privilege is showing comment.
But you know what? No, I'm glad that we made that distinction because, and I'll say it. One of the hardest things to do in therapy is work with individuals that do not want to change. Oh. And I tend to have a mindset that I'm sorry if it sounds this way. I tend to have a mindset that if an individual does not want to change, I'm not going to break myself trying to figure out how to make that person change.
I agree.
Once an individual has reached a certain age, for some people it's adulthood, for some people it's right before you become an adult, and an individual wants to continuously do what they want to do, it is so hard, borderline impossible, without that individual going through an experience to change that person's mindset. Okay. And that's where a lot of people tend to beat their heads is, how do I prevent this person from even going to jail in the first place, or how do I do all of this? You can try to give as much education as possible in the community, but unfortunately, if that individual has it set in their mind that they want to do certain things, it's what they're going to do. So to anyone watching, to moms, dads, sisters, brothers, concerned friends, if that individual is going down a path of destruction, you can try to talk to them and show them all the different directions they can go, but you can't do it for them. And I'd hate to see individuals watching or that have family members or friends watching that stress themselves out thinking, how do I stop this from happening from this person? Yeah. Well, you can't. You can give them all the information in the world, but that person is determined to want to live this life. It's what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other ways we wanted to add about change and what can we do? What can people who are watching kind of do in that respect? Just regards to incarceration, someone's arrested, different stuff, but just anything before or during or after that we want to add?
Let's say that if you have a family member or a friend who has been in jail, even if it's just for one night, I believe that individual needs as much support and encouragement from you as possible. Chances are, if they've been in jail, and again, we're talking about individuals that are open to that change. If they've been in jail, the last thing that would help them is to come home and be reminded about how much they've been in jail, what got them in jail, all of that. It's the individual they've been through rehabilitation. They've been through the process, so to speak. Yeah. You know, they've done the rehab. If an individual had a drug problem, you don't bring them home after rehab and constantly tell them about their drug problem. Yeah. So if an individual has been in jail, when you bring them home, jail should not be what you constantly talk to that person and refer to them as. They need to be reminded about their humanity, about their identity before they went to jail, and about what their potential to be, what their potential can be. Instead of just talking so much about, oh, well, this is what got you here and this is what caused this. Mm-hmm. When we focus on the negative like that, the negative is what gets constantly reinforced.
Mm-hmm. And if someone, the other point is someone does come out and you do notice a change, especially in regards to their mental health, and just getting them checked to see if they can go to a hospital or even to the ER if you have to, or I can go back again to your community service board if you do notice a change and they're open to going. And just know, I think that they will be a changed person. They're going to be a changed person.
They're going to be different.
So there's going to be some patience and some time. Also, things in the community, continuing to make awareness about mental health. Mm-hmm. And
guys, it doesn't mean anyone's crazy. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It's we just need to be more aware of mental health. It doesn't mean an individual's schizophrenic. Doesn't mean they're bipolar. It just means this individual's having a hard time coping with the world around them, and they need support. It's as simple as that.
I like that definition.
It's what it is. It's exactly what it is.
Hard time coping with the world around them and need some help. And then the addictions piece, because we do talk about a lot of people being arrested for the crack.
The crack.
The crack.
You got me there.
The crack. Of course, the opioid and all those things, but in particular for the crack, cocaine, also for DUIs and anything like that. I do want people to remember that addictions is a disease. It's not that people have a willpower and they can just stop. And the way I say it's disease is because it affects the dopamine, mm-hmm. and it affects the dopamine. Dopamine is what gives us the happy pleasures in the brain, happiness in the brain, and when that people use, in particular, it releases extra dopamine in the brain, and so people always want to get that high. And the first high, they can never get the first high, but that's why it's a disease, because of that factor, and that it can be managed, but it's always going to be there. So if you're thinking, well, why don't they just stop? They need the support and need to get the help and the treatment to stop. Mm-hmm. And so you can educate yourself. There's NAMI, there's many organizations out mm-hmm. there to support for the mental illness and also for addictions as well, to also educate yourself. But if someone's
education's the biggest thing.
It's huge, and support. If somebody's not ready to change, the fact that you support and treat them like a human being mm-hmm. is huge, because they may not want to change right away or take ownership, especially with mental illness and addictions. But if you still continue to treat them like a human being, that doesn't mean they have to disrespect you. You're still going to set boundaries with them. But you still treat them like a human being and you give them support whenever, because people are not always using, when they're not using their call, you're going to hang out with them, they're a great person. But you just set the boundaries maybe when they are for you. But if you give them that support and human beings, people are going to come back. People are going to trust you. People are going to feel like
come back. Trust me, they'll be back.
At some time, they feel like they have some hope and that this is going to be possible. So I think that's the education piece, support piece,
mm-hmm.
is huge. And please, if you haven't seen the documentaries of the Khalif Browder and the 13 on Netflix, highly encourage you to watch it. Like, you know, some people might be your video. Some people might what was the other thing? You might want to go and start going into policy and into politics and going into changes for that as well. There was a couple of things I've seen on TED Talks, a couple of them, where I think it was in Boston, where they're starting to, if people get arrested, they're getting information on the people that have been arrested. Well, why did they arrest? Why did they commit the crime? Especially if it's like stealing and things like that. And then they make a way and make it possible for them. It's on a TED Talk. I can't remember its name.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it was a really good TED Talk. There was a couple of them where, so there are people going out there doing some work and helping people get the support that they really need, which is going to be the housing, the employment, the mental health aspect, and not just locking them up.
Something sticks out to me, Bianca, about the support, though. When support is a broad term, and we have a lot of us have a tendency. No, you're using it correct. You're fine.
Okay.
You get a lot of people that give what they think. Excuse me.
And does anyone have any questions? Just while Justin's talking, if you have any questions,
type
put it in the comments.
Yeah, type them. We can see them. When a lot of people have a tendency to give support, their support starts to blur that line between support / encouragement and direction and criticism. And if I've been incarcerated for years, if I've been locked up for years, the last thing that I can think an individual that's been locked up wants is to immediately come out and be told what to do again. It feels like that's a very quick way to get an individual to stop listening or to stop responding, is to immediately tell that person, okay, now that you're out of jail, this is what you need to do. See, that's, I think a certain amount of encouraged independence will go a long way instead of guided independence. Meaning don't tell them how to be independent, don't push them that direction, just mainly encourage them in their own decision making and their own independence. And I think that will carry someone significantly longer, significantly better than just telling them what to do.
Someone pointed out this will go back to working with families on their transitions.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Families do need to be worked with when an individual comes home. Absolutely does.
Work so they can learn how to support.
Right.
You know.
But sometimes they're cut off from their family.
Well, until they get out, right?
And that's another issue. Again, going back to the money to be able to see them or afford contact and things like that.
Right.
That's another good point too.
That's a great point. Thank you, Laura. That's a great point.
So does anyone have any questions on this that you guys might want to ask before
you have yours down there. Okay.
This is Jared's. Mine is here.
Oh, okay.
I'm on trying to go back and forth. No, I think yours, people are just making a lot more comments when you ask any questions. I don't think anyone. All right.
So you mentioned Bianca, something you have written down I really like. That not, and Jared, you touched on it earlier, but right before we went live, not every, besides the fact that you're not in the treatment centers, but when an individual's incarcerated, certain treatments can't even be used. Certain medications can't even be taken. Certain things can't be done. So that individual could possibly be their whole time while they're in jail, they could be sitting there getting no help.
Or they're taking, they might not be, they might be just given generic
or they're getting very effective help. Right.
Because everyone's body is different and responds different to medication. So they're going to get the basic medication. It could be too much for them or not enough. They don't get that.
Well, because I think, and I feel like someone mentioned it earlier in one of our chats, that a lot of time, besides the rehabilitation piece, and I'm going to keep putting that in quotes, I'm cynical, I'm sorry. Besides the rehabilitation piece, individuals aren't really given a lot of things in jail to help them, but more to stabilize. A lot of the mental health treatment that jail provides, because again, jail and prison aren't places to help people get better. it's a mix between punishment, let's say punishment, timeout, and they're getting rehab. So they're not meant to get better in jail so much as they're meant to just be stable. Mm-hmm. Let's keep you here until your time is passed, and then you're out. Yep. So if you're dealing with mental health, if you're struggling with that, you're not going to get necessarily the help you need in jail. You're going to get that. You're going to get that when you get out, if you can. Yeah. And that's a big part. Which progress?
On, I think the other one was Black mothers raising Black.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. We'll do that at the beginning of the year.
Beginning of the year, that's the next one.
Yeah, we're taking a break. We need to rest. So we're not going to do anything until next year, but we're still going to continue on the subject of Black community. Still going to surround the Black community, of course, and then mental health, as we are therapists. So from our perspective, so just in saying that we don't have the whole picture, there are some limitations in our perspective.
Oh, definitely.
As well, from that point, but that's the standpoint that we come from. Mm-hmm. So we just want to say, oh, we have one more question. What's that?
Oh,
I think we answered that.
We've looked at impact of prisons, and what are your thoughts about the impact on minority communities? The answer, in my opinion, comes.
How do we push back effectively?
How do we push back effectively? The answer is actually within the question, in my opinion. It's that community aspect. It's that within our communities, we've got to learn how to come together. I love using the word unite. We've got to learn how to unite as a community and start to educate as a whole. Yeah. And recognize that we've got it's a huge mind shift. It's not easy at all. I wish it was, but it's not. We've got to start to come together and actually educate the whole community. Mm-hmm. So like we've talked about the support piece when an individual comes home. That support shouldn't just come from their immediate family. It needs. I wish they could receive that support from their whole community.
Yeah. It takes a village.
Exactly. Exactly.
It always goes back to unity and togetherness. Like I can have my one hand. There's only so much I can do. But if I bring my two hands together and I turn my hands around, look, they're entwined and they're stronger and they can hold more. And that's the community. Like alone, it's kind of like I always think about. I can't do anything without my elbow, mm-hmm. Right? I can't do anything without my hand. I can't do anything with just my leg. Like I need my foot. So it kind of goes back to the community and working together and not dividing, because from slavery, it's been about dividing and separation, the light skin, the dark skin, in the house, in the field. And now it can be the same thing, but just in a different way. But it's always going to go back to division, right. And we don't work. Things don't work when you're divided. Things work when you are connected and you work together. Yep. Are we going to do it perfectly? No. Is there going to be conflict? Yes. But what is the big picture? What is the big picture? If you keep focused on the big versus on the big picture of what we can do and where we're going in the future versus what's going wrong, you can do so much more.
And then how do you get the community to shift their mind? It's something else that we talked about before. You can't make everyone. You just flat out can't. Mm-hmm. You can give the information and educate those that want to be educated and receive the information. Mm-hmm. And those see someone said mentoring within the community. And you're not going to get everyone to join in on that. Yeah. You're just not. You're going to get some.
I want to, because I do big, I have a mentee in the house.
Oh yeah, you're big on it.
Big brother, big sister, right? And last year there was a huge backlog. There was 500 children. The majority of them were Black and Latino.
Right.
The majority of them were Black males,
mm-hmm.
not Black males, that did not have a mentor.
Because a lot of times, and I'm not trying to generalize anyone if I say this. If it sounds offensive, I sincerely apologize. But a lot of times, what I experience in the therapy I give, you have an overwhelming amount of Black mothers where the father may or may not be there, mm-hmm. and they're looking for something.
Yeah,
to get their young men in.
But then in the community, there's a lot of Black men that can mentor these children.
I agree. I completely agree.
It doesn't take much time.
It doesn't.
So yes, mentoring in
agree.
the community, and you don't just have to do Big Brother Big Sister. Then you could just do your own.
You
There's
can
so
just
many
talk to
different-
people
and
in
there
your
are
community.
and there are people who do it. There are people who do it, but there is. I'm just going back to the fact that there were like 500 of those on the waiting list last year with Black males.
That's wow.
The Big Brother Big Sister, and there's still a waiting list, but
I'm sure.
we did a huge push,
Yeah.
huge push.
That's
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I was putting that all on my Facebook. Yeah,
And-
it was a huge push for that.
And just to go back to that question, how would you actually want to shift the community mindset? I would just real simple, change it from individualism to collectivism.
Yep.
That's what it has to go. That's what it
Not me, we.
And collectivism is just more about it just goes back to that saying, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. So just instead of it being about me and just my family, it's about us and everyone in this community. If I see Bianca struggling, I'm going to help Bianca
Right.
because she's within my community. If I see
Right.
Justin struggling, I'm going to help him because he's within my community. Not because they're just my friends, or not because, they may not be blood, but they're in my community, and I'm going to help them. I'm going to uplift them because if they succeed, then I succeed.
Yeah.
So it's all about changing that mindset from individualism to collectivism.
Less me, more we. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching.
Yes,
Please
thank you
share. If you have any questions, you can just always contact any one of us on our Facebook or Instagram
Oh yeah, definitely.
pages.
Send us messages, everything. We'll gladly
And we go
respond
back
and
and we
answer.
look at the comments. So if anyone is watching this after the broadcast, we go back and we look on the comments.
Yep.
So
Yes,
Absolutely.
it will be up on YouTube, on Bianca's YouTube, and on mine, probably within a few days.
They usually do better coming around now. It'd be like a day.
Don't make that promise.
Don't put that pressure on us.
Take that promise.
It's coming to the end of the year. We're tired.
Got kids. But thank you all so much for tuning in. We
Yeah,
greatly
absolutely.
appreciate you all.
Absolutely.
We look forward to you all being with us in the next broadcast. We're definitely looking to talk more about, what do you say, the Black family?
Black
Yeah.
family.
The Black family. What it's starting to look like and what it's slowly becoming. And
Globalism hasn't done that.
oh yeah, the community aspect. That's true.
That is true.
All
I want
right.
to talk to that person offline because
I'm gonna send you her information.
She got some good stuff.
Yeah, she's a good one. All right, guys. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Bye.